So you want to buy a house in 2024? Well, this is going to be a very tricky subject, and I happen to be here to help you figure that out. As a real estate agent, investor, I will be buying houses this year, and I'm going to teach you how to do it so you don't hit all the speed bumps. And if you just got done watching my other video on my advice to home sellers, well, this is the video about home buyers. And if you're a home seller, check that video out and then come back to this one, and we'll be able to discuss everything. There is a lot of game theory that goes into buying a house. And in this video, I'm going to talk about as many as I can run into in 15 minutes or so. And this is valuable information, and this is how I go about buying it. And as a real estate agent, I try to advise my clients the same stuff. So let's get right to it. It's getting to be a rocky market out there. Still, in Florida, things are selling. They're just selling a little slower. We had such a low volume of properties here on the Gulf Coast and so many people coming here that it was propping prices up no matter what the interest rate was doing. And since we are in an inflationary market, well, inflation is yet to go down as of right now on the 18th. Investors are still trying to hedge themselves against inflation. So we got a lot of weird things going on. You got to understand these things. Investors still think that we'll see rate cuts going into the year. They've said everything from 3 to 1. I think war theory will say we'll probably see 1. It really... the Fed's saying 3. I don't see we see 3 because inflation is still up. And if we knew true inflation, well, that would tell us a different story. That being said, if you reduce rates into an inflationary market, you will see rising housing prices. This is what happens when they printed so much money back during the cough days that it just made prices go through the roof. Cheap money makes prices go up. We saw that 2% to 3% mortgage. It was a poison pill, and it really set our markets in the wrong direction. And when you have 40% of the properties being accumulated by corporations and LLCs, well, that's another part of it. There's a lot of problems that are going on in the resale market here in Florida. Insurance is the game, and you got to make sure your property will get you good insurance. You have to know what type of loan you're using, whether it's VA, FHA, USDA, and then you have to war game those together into the property you're trying to find. Look, location is everything when buying a piece of property, and never swap out location for a cheaper rate. Negotiate into the deal because the money is made on the buy and very seldom on the sell, unless you're just a master at factoring in building in equity to your house. And we're not counting the last 2 years. I know you're going to say it. That was an anomaly just because real estate went up so fast, and it just had to do with the amount of money that was out there in the market. The liquidity was just everywhere. There's cash everywhere, and people were hedging themselves. Those that were in properties, they did well, and those that weren't, well, they were chasing a running deer. And it's really hard to chase the running deer. As us real estate agents were out there trying to price these properties, they were just going up, and up. So you have to ask yourself, do you think the market is going to go up, stay still, or go down? And that is, really the meat and potatoes of what you're going to argue with me on this video. And I believe that properties are bought with terms more than they are with price. And you can negotiate a lot of things, and it's not always about the top line. So let's say you're looking at a contract and it's $200,000. Well, if you baked in $7,000 in closing costs, it's $193,000 and not $200,000. So if you think about it, I'll talk about at the end of this video a deal I actually did where the terms and the date was more important than the value that we were discussing, the price point. And sometimes that a motivated seller, let's say they want to close in 3 weeks, will accept a price that's way lower than if they had to close in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So sometimes terms and time are more motivating than the actual price. Sometimes cash speaks more than, let's say, a VA loan. Okay, and if you're dealing with an FHA loan, well, some properties are not going to qualify for that. So most of the agents or the sellers, well, FHA and VA might not have the weight it needs to carry that cash would, or a conventional loan. Because most of the time when you're in these deals, you're looking at cash first, conventional second. FHA, VA are going to rival each other. USDA, well, they got their own special qualifications. So you're looking for a type of money as if you're on the sell side. If you're on the buy side, you're working with a type of money and you're trying to get the property you want. So remember that sometimes if you don't have the right money or the whatever, see if you can bake in terms. Like let's say you can wrap up 4% in a VA loan in closing costs or whatever. I'm just being theoretical here. Well, you can bake in some things on the closing costs, and sometimes that $200,000 amount can be different. And I mean, like on line items, okay? So just remember that terms are how you really can save on property. Like let's say you can get them to throw in a roof, or let's say you can get them to change from septic to sewer before closing, or say you can get them to do things that will allow your insurance to be better, or your the house itself to be better. I mean, because in some of these properties, sewer is a way better situation than these old septic tanks on some of these old houses. So just keep these things in mind. So if you're going after new, remember that when you buy a new build property, usually your taxes were assessed on the unimproved property, and when you buy it that next year, you're probably going to get reassessed. So you're probably going to get caught with if you're escrowing the mortgage, it's going to go up on you. It's not going to be fixed because the taxes are going to go up. Just remember that. Make sure you get your homestead exemption if it's offered in your state. Remember that your homeowner's insurance is not going to stay the same. It's going to keep going up too. And so your monthly payment most likely isn't fixed. The only thing that is fixed is your interest rate and your payment. But, just be cognizant of all this. Now, all this being said, I'm going to teach you how to war game this. There is one anomaly right now that is going to hit us come July 21st, I believe it is. This is a big one for all of y'all. It's the National Association of Realtors debacle that they have going on. I did a whole video on this. The mess that the Realtors, National Association of Realtors has created. This should get them sued 10 times over, but we're not going to get into that. I got into it on that video. Go watch that video. But they're going to force all real estate agents, all realtors, however you want to say it, to make their buyers sign a buyer's agreement prior to seeing a property. That means that you will have to upfront say that you're going to pay a real estate agent their percentage before they unlock a door. Now, it's partly not the buyer's agent's fault. It's partly the rules that are being made because they are going to take the buyer side commission off the MLS. Okay, the buyer's agent is not going to be able to see where used to they could see, hey, buyer's agent commission 2.5%, bring me a buyer. Now you're not going to be able to see that. And it's muddied the waters on everything across the board. And so if you're wanting representation, it's going to be really hard to know who's paying and who is not. There's going to be a lot of games played. This is going to have to play out in motion, and it's really hard to advise you on this. What I would say is just be cognitive of it. And if you know absolutely nothing about real estate, pay for the doggone agent. I'm really touchy about this subject because what NAR did and this whole litigation did is it will create an entire section of buyers that will be unrepresented because they can't pay for the agent. And that really makes me mad because the people that the National Association of Realtors were supposed to protect through their ethics is the ones that can't pay for representation in this situation. They have made an entire section of the population unrepresented. And those were the ones that needed to be protected and that needed help. And most these loans, VA, I'm talking to you, are not allowing for veterans to be able to pay for the agent or for anything about the loan to factor in the agent cost. And so whether you like real estate agents or not, they are a necessity. Without them, you'll have complete chaos on the battlefield. You have litigation everywhere. And for those that can't afford representation, that $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, let's say to $225,000, $250,000, $250,000 bracket and below, the ones that can't pay for the agent, well, they are going to be taken advantage of in the negotiation process, going to be taken advantage of in the contract process because that seller's agent is most likely going to be operating in a single agent fashion, which means they are going to have their fiduciary duty to the actual seller. They're going to protect the seller's interest, and you being unrepresented is going to be staring down the barrel of a freight train, okay? Just understand these people do it for a living. They negotiate for a living, and that's what you're going to be going up against. You should be furious. Call your congressman and tell him to fix this whole NAR situation. Make sure you research your agent, sit them down, quiz them just like you're hiring an attorney, a CPA, any of those. Make sure they know what they're talking about. And if they can't do what I'm doing right now and talk about real estate, then you don't need to hire them. Go hire the best you can, because they're all going to charge you the same amount. And the good agents, you know, it's just the game. They play, you know, in tiers of the property value. But you can find a good agent. Just get out there, treat them right. They treat you right, and you'll get good representation. Now, if you're not going to do that, you got to know how to write the contract, how to negotiate, how to set up inspections, how to know the assessments, how to know if you're being overpriced or underpriced, how to know all the things about real estate, know title companies, know survey companies, know a handyman to fix something, and make sure you hit all the dates in the contract, know, well, like here in Florida, a FAR bar versus an as-is FAR bar versus all the different contracts. That's going to be up to you. And I don't advise that. Only a fool has himself as a client, and if I was outside of my area, I'd hire a real estate agent too. I hired an agent in my own county, because at that deal, at that time, I wanted the property more than I wanted my commission. And sometimes you got to look at this stuff just like a business transaction. So after you figure out that whole mess about your real estate agent, I happen to be a real estate agent. Email down below if you need one here on the Gulf Coast. I'd be happy to help you. But just know, when you go to buy the property, you got to know what you're looking at, all right? You got to know about maintenance, okay? We got to make sure there's a good roof. If it's over 15 years old, good luck, negotiate into it, try to get one before you close, because your insurance is going to go up. These insurance companies are not playing anymore about old roofs. It's got to be able to have wind mitigation. It's going to need to have wind mitigation shutters if you're on the Gulf Coast, 2 miles and under from the coast. I'm not an insurance agent. I'm just telling you what they all say. Now, once you know that your house is in good shape, make sure it's got a solid 4-point. That means roof, AC, plumbing, electrical. And if you're going to have a Tesla plug, make sure that bad boy has been inspected and permitted, and we don't need no fires, because you want to get a good insurance policy, because that's going to be part, if you're escrowing, of your escrow. Insurance keeps going up, and they cancel you all the time. And if your house cannot qualify, let's say they drop you, and you got a roof problem, a plumbing problem, electrical problem, and you try to get new insurance and you can't get it. Well, like let's say you have galvanized pipes or cloth wiring or whatever. Well, they're going to force insurance on you. The mortgage company is. And then it's going to go from $1,000 a year or $2,000 a year or whatever you're paying to $15,000 a year, $10,000 a year. And all of a sudden your monthly is going to go up. So just be prepared for that. Be cognizant of that. Make sure you get a property that is in good shape. And if you're not, and you're savvy and you're trying to get equity in it and buy it at a good price, know that going into it. Already price in ARV minus repairs, okay? Me as an investor, I'm at 70% minus repairs of the ARV, okay? Sometimes I'll go 65. Sometimes I'll add that extra 10% for the who knows what's out there. You don't know what's in the walls, under the walls, around the walls, okay? It could be termites. It could be all kinds of stuff. Old houses have lots of surprises. Talking real fast, try to get this all in 15 minutes. You need to know if you're in a flood zone. You need to know if there's any assessments. You need to know if there's an HOA. You need to know if there's anything that's not being disclosed. Let me tell you something. Here's a good situation if you don't want to use a real estate agent. I have a friend that happened to be buying $1 million lot on the beach. And the clients, before they had hired her, were trying to buy from the seller's agent. Seller's agent was like, well, I'm a single agent. I don't have to disclose. I'm going to try not to disclose this stuff to you. So he was playing the games, and they didn't know enough to catch him. And he forgot to mention that you couldn't have a driveway on this $1 million lot. They were planning to put a nice driveway in for the house they were building, and nobody told them that there was a restriction, and they couldn't do that. And the FDOT said no. And so that was a major problem in that deal, and they just didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't know where to find the information, and they almost made a really bad move. I had another client that bought a piece of property before they hired me, and they did it over the counter with a farmer, and they didn't go to planning and zoning and figured out if they could actually build a house on the entire 10 acres. Come to find out, county said that they couldn't build a house on that 10 acres, an entire 10 acres with a deeded private road next to $1 million houses and an easement. The county said no. Well, that piece of property at that moment wasn't worth the sand that it was created with, and they had paid $300,000 for it. These things happen, and you got to be prepared because certain areas have restrictions and zoning issues and things that you don't know about. That's why, like, if you practice up in Florida, up in the Panhandle of Florida, and you go to Miami, there's a lot of things different. And I would never practice. I would never represent myself in Miami, even though it's in the state of Florida, just because the rules are different. Also, if it's an old house, make sure you get a WDO because termites, pole beetles, and any type of fungus, man, they can wreak havoc on wood. Just make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're doing all these things. And if you're a buyer representing yourself, make sure you understand this because nobody's going to hold your hand unless you got a good agent that's going to be there fighting for you. And that's what they're hired to do. I hope all this stuff is making sense. I'm trying to get it all out there. And remember, all these things add up to the price point that you're trying to pay. Let's say the house is $300,000 and you need a roof and you need a few other things. Well, you got to price that in. Repairs, go ahead, get your invoices, know how much a roof is, know how much whatever the repairs got to be, and you're offering that. Or you're negotiating in and say, hey, you know, we can't get insurance on this. You're going to have to pay for a roof and we need it before closing. And figure it out and, you know, extend the date sometimes until you get that, you know, in the package. Sometimes you got to have that conversation before you even get in the contract because it might not happen and you're just wasting everybody's time. Look, inspections are expensive. Survey, home inspection, 4-point, wind mitt, WDO, let's say you have to have a septic inspection. Let's say you have to have some type of record pull with the title company or some type of abstract that's got to be created and researched. All these things take money. And remember that if you're going into a contract and you spend $1,200 on inspections and blah, 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 and then you bounce out of it because it just wouldn't happen. Let's say the lender disqualified it or whatever, and you go back in, it's another $1,200, then another $1,200, and then another $1,200. You got to be cognizant of these things or you can burn through a lot of money very fast. And let's say you're doing 100% financing, okay, and you barely have enough for your inspections. Well, you got to know that. And remember, if you're looking at an old roof, old hot water heater, old AC, anything like that, and you don't have the reserves, the cash flow, or the cash to back you up, you get into that property and one of those things go out, whammo, you're in trouble. And let's say the insurance company comes back 30 days later and was like, we need you to get a new hot water heater now, or we're not gonna allow you to have, we're not gonna keep your policy. Now you're in a tight fix. And that's how these things can snowball real fast. You gotta be cognizant of it. I've talked about this in depth on my other videos. Go watch the video I made on houses never to buy. I go into some of this and then on my last video. So I've talked about interest rates coming down, which would actually mean if you're reducing rates into an inflationary market, that by next year you can see prices start go up again. And it depending on where in there they slide, you know, the market's already baking in that we're going to get 3 rate cuts. I don't think we're going to get it because the Fed is worried about it, and they know that we have to have an up market because this is election season. Okay, they're not going to do anything to hurt the economy theoretically until after the election. Then all bets are off. Who knows what can happen? But I don't think we can go up anymore on interest rates. The market's already cooling off and things are sitting longer. I will say this, properties that are in great shape are not really sitting that long. I mean, 30 days was normal back in the day, and a normal interest rate back in the day, I mean, in the last 15, 20 years was 5%, 6%. You know, I think maybe even, was it 7% statistically? We're not really in a high rate environment. We're just in a high rate environment because we are used to 3% mortgages, okay? And that was a poison pill for our economy. Look what happened. So I don't think we're going to go back to 2 or 3%, but let's say you have to buy now and have a higher interest rate. Just remember, you can refinance later and look for that. I would be trying to pay the mortgage down. I would be trying to get rid of the mortgage because I don't do mortgages on properties because you can go watch my videos on that. I believe in paid for properties because insurance is always the factor, and they can drop you and force you into a bad insurance policy that's astronomically higher. If you own your house outright, they can't do that. You can tell them to pound sand. Or you can just carry liability insurance, or you can just carry fire and burglary, or you can get rid of wind. You can do a lot of things, or just self-insure. And that gives you options. That's why I believe in paid for houses. And you can watch the last video, said, and I'll say this again, and I'll die on this hill, that I don't care what your interest rate is. It does not matter if your insurance triples and you can't do anything about it. I had a lot of investor friends that would make fun of me for being paid for houses, and they had 10, 15 houses, okay? And they had that great 3% interest rate. And then the insurance on every one of them tripled, and then the taxes went up because the price point across the area went up. They reassessed, and now his cash flow doesn't exist anymore, and he's having to fund all these properties out of his own pocket, and he's eating up all his cash flow. Just think. Okay, 2 and 3% they might cash flow. 5 and 7% interest rates, it's going to be very hard to find cash flow at the 1% rule. You're going to be looking at 1.5%, maybe cash flows. This is getting in depth with real estate theory here. But just remember, if you have to refi later, do that. I would just find the house I won't get the right location, negotiate in it, get it 10% under, 15% under, and then work on paying my house off. And then if I have to refi out later and pull the money or the equity out, cool, whatever. Live there 2 to 5 years, and I go to the next property, I take that tax-free gain, look it up in the tax code. If I've lived there 2 of the last 5, I can take that tax-free, move into the next property, roll into that one, keep moving. If you get a tax-free gain, you take it. You don't be a distant landlord at 2% and let somebody destroy your house because you're not looking at it every week or so. Like, I've talked in depth about this, and this is all theory. Hope this stuff is sinking in. Just trying to get it out there to save you guys a lot of hassle in the future, because I've lived through all this before. In conclusion, I would say make sure you research your area, drive around your area prior to going in to find an agent. Call an agent, interview a few of them, make them produce a resume, ask them how many properties they have sold within the last 12 months. Don't listen to, I've been doing this for 30 years, because I know a lot of agents that sold one house a year for 30 years, and I know a lot of agents that have done 100 houses in a year, okay? I know agents that's been around for 2 years, and they've done 200-300 transactions, and they're beasts, okay? Don't listen to that. I've been doing this 20 years, or they're, let's say they've been doing it for 20 years and they don't know how to use .loop or DocuSign or any type of digital anything. That can get painful real fast, okay? So just make sure you interview them. Make sure you would hire them just like you would an attorney or anything like that. Understand, maybe do some research on some title companies. Figure out how to wire money, figure out how to do all the things that are needed in a real estate transaction. Have somebody that's done some deals walk you through it mentally until you understand it. But don't have like that cousin or that sister that's never bought a house echoing in your ear and then not listening to your real estate agent or your title agent or your lender. And remember, they're professionals for a reason. And fire them if you don't have full trust in them, okay? But if you have full trust in them, listen to these people that do deals and don't listen to those that don't do deals. Also, make sure that you went through all the disclosures. Make sure there's a seller's disclosure. Make sure there's any type of assessments or anything like that. Make sure there's no open permits. Make sure you've done your due diligence on the property as much as possible. Go talk to the neighbors. And then make your first bid 10-15% under, because if you believe the market is going to go down, which no matter what I say, people think it's going to go down 50%. It's not going to go down 50% because the entire U.S. economy would collapse. Okay, real estate is the backbone of the U.S. economy. So if you think it's going to go down 10-15%, like Goldman Sachs said, 8 months ago, then make your first bid 10-15% under. Okay, if it's the location you want, say, okay, 15% under. Make them counter you. If you can get a counter from the other agent, you're in the game, okay? And if they counter you, then always counter the counter. Remember, you always counter, okay? And then if they deny it, then settle into the deal. Try to work in a contingency like a couple of repairs, or maybe they pay for a survey, or see if they have a survey you can use, or things like that. Save you money. And now you're cooking with peanut oil. That's what I would do. I would negotiate into the house I want, okay? Because sometimes properties aren't bought on price, they're bought on terms, okay? I did a deal last week. They wanted $10,000 in credits, And I was like, I'll give you 3 if we close on Friday. And they came back and said, we want 5 and we'll close on Monday. And I was like, no, we'll do 4 and close on Friday. And it was like, deal. Okay? Remember, terms buy properties. Just keep that in mind and you'll do okay. Comment down below if you've got anything to add to this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope this helped. Email me if you need to buy real estate here on the Gulf Coast, licensed in Florida, Alabama, Panhandle of Florida, and Lower Alabama. And I'll see you guys on the next video.